Hey everybody, welcome behind the scenes at the 3000 series Love of Quilting filming. I'm your host, Sara Gallegos, and with me is my new sewing buddy, Felicia Brenoe from Felicia's World.
Hi, Sarah.
We just filmed a really fun episode on English paper piecing. And it's really funny because sometimes we have certain episodes that we're afraid maybe don't have enough to fill the 22 minutes. And this was one of those that we were kind of nervous about, but it turned out we had so much information to give. We didn't quite get to all of it. So we wanted to give you just a couple of important tips to share with you just to supplement the episode that we just shot. And we're having such a fun time working together. So it's fun to get to shoot a little extra tips.
Yeah. So what we didn't get to was when you have put together your paper piecing recette, you're going to need to take the papers out. And the rule of thumb when you're doing English paper piecing is that you never take the paper out until all the sides of the hexagon is covered. So on this one, you can see the big blue basting stitches here. We're going to take those out and we're going to take the extra fabric out at the same time. So remember that I was piecing with square pieces of fabric, not hexagons. And so there is some extra fabric here to take out.
Right.
And the way that I do it is that I take that extra fabric out while the paper is still in so I don't accidentally hack through
the front of the piece. That's a good idea.
Ask me how I know this.
We always make the mistake to learn the lesson and give you the tip.
And if you've done a lot of piecing, you don't want to do this right after you vacuumed your house. You want to do it the day before you vacuum your house because it does make a mess. And then at this point, you can just kind of take your stitches out. And I love these sort of short-bladed, sort of spring-loaded scissors. It makes the this task a lot easier.
And
then it just comes out. And you're good to go. Now, an important consideration when you're doing this is how are you going to quilt your quilt?
Right.
So if you're going to have it long-armed, for example, maybe this isn't so important. But if you're going to be hand quilting especially, and you may want to do that after you've spent substantial hours hand piecing your quilt top, is that you don't want to have to hand quilt through a lot of layers of fabric. So you feel free to make the seam allowance here, you know, a little bit under 1/4 of an inch. That will work out just fine.
And it's already stitched. You've already hand stitched, secured all of the edges. So you don't have to worry about not having that full 1/4 of an inch for your quilting.
Yeah. Okay. So if we can imagine for just a minute that this is actually a large quilt and that this is the outer circumference of our quilt. At some point, this paper on the outer edges are going to have to come out.
Right.
And I will do that as the very last thing I'm doing after the whole quilt top has come together. And I will usually make a straight cut through here and put a normal, you know, a binding on or a bias binding. So you take the papers out, the same method, and as I'm taking the papers out, I will go behind with an iron and I will press and starch so that this is this is really stable once the papers come out. And then when you're cutting the edges off in order to get a straight edge, you can actually put the binding on. This will unfold when the paper comes out, and you can actually put your 1/4 inch line right at the notch there.
So she does not have the edge of the ruler all the way into the notch between the hexie. She's a 1/4 of an inch out. Because think about the fact that you've got a 1/4 inch seam allowance when you attach that binding. So you would lose that tip.
Yeah, you use a little bit there, but it's probably the easiest way to bind these quilts.
I think so.
Yeah.
And you were saying that the reason that we don't want to take the papers out is because these little corners will kind of buckle and come apart. They're only basted into place. They're not sewn into anything yet. So if you start taking those papers out before they're secured, you said those kind of unfold and you lose the crispness of the edge.
Yeah. Another thing to consider is that these papers can be reused. So you'll see there's little holes in them. Doesn't matter. You can reuse these and they'll get folds too, because as you're piecing your hexes, you invariably have to fold your pieces.
Just to get it out of the way.
You can reuse these until they fall apart.
That's nice. And then I also noticed you have a few little, nicks in the side there. Sometimes with your hand stitches we mentioned in the episode, you accidentally kind of clip into the paper, and that's fine. Just gonna pull right out.
And you'll feel when these are ready to be thrown away, because when the corners go soft, they're pretty much done.
They're done.
Yeah.
No crisp edges.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this little bit of extra information with our viewers.
Well, thank you.